Hey, how's it going? I'm just gonna turn my music down a little bit and we are gonna get started. That might still be a little loud. Hang on. Alright, so this is gonna be a session on how to custom sew a top closure hairpiece. And eventually this video will be used to create a more in-depth look at how I got as far as I did right here. So let me take it off and see if I can show you up close. This was originally a top piece for, let me see if I can turn this one over. I cut it up basically. So that's the top, and it was a full piece, went temple to temple. It was huge. And my client, we got it where it had a left side part to be worn to the right, and it was bleached out Barbie blonde, like level 9.5. It was like not a good look. So I did the custom color on her to make her pretty, and it's a dead-on match with my client's hair color that I give to her. So awesome. But we needed to fix it. And so even though I have this pinned on the head pretty high, she's actually going to wear it low into the occipital under the curvature of her head. She's going to wear it low. And then the second piece here that I have to finish, she's going to wear that one actually right underneath the crown. And they're going to layer just like that. And then I'm also going to give her the option of one little tiny piece to clip on right underneath her left part right there. So that way it just kind of fills in, because her hair is very, very fine. The strands are not thick, that's what it means, and she is not populated well with hair. So it means that per square inch, there's just not very many hairs, so we can see through to her scalp. Currently, what I went ahead and did was I cut out the shape that I wanted to have from the top piece that used most of the hair with the correct knotted direction. So when the hair is knotted, it's done by hand, and they are able to create growth patterns, right? So I needed to make sure that, because I had the left side part in the original piece, that when I cut it, I was literally going to cut on that parting so that the hair would continue to fall in the correct direction. Because you see, if I change it, it's always going to kind of go to that direction. So we need to work with it. And that's how I'm repurposing this here. Now, once I have cut it apart, we're creating another problem that has to be solved. And if you see up close, the original edge here from the factory was sewn before the hair was hand-tied onto the piece. They rolled the edge over to the top side, actually, so that way there's no raw edge and it's all one piece of material. There's no binding. And as you can see right now, I have begun hand sewing real tiny whip stitches with a clear type of thread and my thin needle to put on a binding. So that's what I'm going to cover with you today. How to put on the binding, why do we need it? The binding reinforces the edge and keeps it strong and durable for lots and lots of wear. If you don't put it on, look up close. That was really fast, huh? Like right here, there's no binding. So it's just the free edge. Just like if you were gonna stick it to your skin and hopefully have it disappear. But when we're making it into a clip-on piece, we need it to be more of a durable edge so it can withstand these clips that I'm going to be sewing on. I got the smallest clips I could find, and yes, I know they don't match the color. I looked everywhere and nobody had the right color. Some stores didn't even have any in stock. So this is brown, and that's what I'm going to be working with. It has a nice little silicone bumper on it to help grip the hair. And those clips are going to be sewn onto this hairpiece after I finish putting the binding on. And once it's done, and we flip it around, I can't show you yet, but it's going to blend really nicely and lay flat and put, right under the hair. It's going to disappear. It's going to be great. And so for clients and people who just can't afford to wear extensions, or maybe it's really bad for your hair, like my particular client was doing okay with her extensions, micro rings that I had made into nano. Like we were working with really small diameters here. And for whatever reason, after a while, her hair and scalp just started to reject the additional weight. And I told her that we had to remove them and that I would stand by her and make sure that we found another solution to create, you know, more volume and make her feel more comfortable with the way her hair looks. So we're pretty excited about this method. This right here is more of the actual fabric that this is made out of, just in a different color, and that is what I cut my binding strips out of. So that's what we're going to go over today. In this particular video, you're going to watch me doing it, and then if you actually have questions and you want to learn more in depth, send me some messages and I can create some better tutorials. But this is right now just to see who's interested. So with that, I'm just going to get to work. And we'll see how long we can go until my phone dies. Okay? So right now, I just want to keep all the hair as neat as possible. So I just kind of bring it down and clip it out of the way. Then I have to locate my thread, which I accidentally put in my clip. Just hang on. There we go. This stuff is so fun to work with because it's like invisible. Also, I'm not liking my stand that I've got my mannequin head on, but we make do with what we've got, right? Get that nice and tight there. All right. So the key here is to make sure that your stitches are small, close together, and very scant. You also have to keep the additional hair that on the top side out of the way. And there's a little thing that I do before I even start sewing to make sure that it won't be bulky. You have to trim the additional hair off that edge. Just a little bit though, too much and it won't look good. So when you're doing your stitches, you also have to make sure that you don't have that little loose end, so keep everything nice and tidy. Once you get into the hang of it, you'll actually get a pretty good rhythm. And usually I actually prefer sitting to do this because it takes a while. So I'm actually going to go find my chair. Give me a second. Needle. I have to put new wheels on this chair. So I'm probably going to look like I'm rocking back and forth. One of the wheels fell off. So I just took all 5 of them off. But now, woo, the center is like lower than the 5 spots for the wheels, so it kind of moves around. It's a good core workout. All right, here we go. Back to the land of boring sewing. No, I'm just kidding. Eventually I'm gonna have to reposition this piece. So I'm really not liking that it's like, I'm just going to do it now. So you might be wondering, what are these little white dots? These little white dots are just regular old sewing pins. And what I'm going to do is put them on my magnetic butcher's block knife holding thing. Thank you to Paul Mitchell way back in the day, a long time ago, saying to use them to hold like your scissors on and like your hair clips. I was at a class in Costa Mesa a long time ago. And I just loved it so much that me being an avid sewer, seamstress, took it right home right away and put all my sewing pins on my magnetic block that I bought immediately. I love magnets in general. Like, who doesn't? Magnets are awesome. All right, so even though my client will not be wearing this on top of her head, I'm going to pin it to the top of this form just so that it's a little bit easier for me to work with as I continue working around the side. And I'm actually going to pin it in such a way that keeps a majority of this hair out of my way. And since part of this piece that I'm working on already has a bound edge, I don't need to continue my binding that far. I don't want to overlap it onto something that's already bound because it will create more bulk and is just completely unnecessary. So I've already continued from the other end of the bound piece, and I'm just finishing right around to this edge. And then I'll show you how to finish your binding, because, you know, we got another free edge that we created and we have to take that down. So what I'm working on here is the curve, and I need to allow just a little bit of excess. You don't want to have too much tension as you sew around the curve. Otherwise your finished piece won't lay flat on the head. Be real careful when you whip the stitch around, because like the thread is so fine and thin that it knots really easily in places you do not want it to knot up yet at. So to do your whip stitch, you're going to hold both pieces of the edge together from both sections. Pull your needle through, then come back around, and just like you were going to tie your shoe, you go through that open loop. Very carefully pull it tight, and it's going to essentially create a little wrap around that edge. This is not something that can be done quickly with carelessness. You really need to focus and pay attention. These two pieces I am making at a ridiculously low cost to my client of just $200, and that includes all costs and products and supplies on this piece and the custom color. It's crazy. That would not really be my normal price, but I feel so terrible for the situation with her hair. I decided that this was the right thing to do to help get her through the situation of her hair and scalp just not agreeing to the extensions anymore. And I really feel that it's important that we find a suitable alternative method for whatever it is that we're trying to help someone with, because we can't expect everyone to fit into, you know, a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. It's just not how things work. So let me see if I can position myself a little bit more to the side so you can see the back view. I make sure to, have a lot of excess on the binding, and whatever I don't use, I will cut off and save for the other piece that needs to be finished. Now, when you are sewing, please make sure that you take breaks. You don't want to be slumped over your work for an extended period of time and have a candy cane back, and that's going to be all bad. Also, probably should have a little bit better lighting, but I don't right now. Where's my lamps? You know what? I'm going to put a lamp on. I got tons of lamps. I think I planned on putting one on and I totally forgot. Oh, look at that. So much better. Okay, let me get one more lab. Hopefully I'm not whiting it out with too much light. So let me fix the distance here. camera. Oh, look at that. That looks amazing. Now you can see what I'm doing. All right, let's hook up one more light. LED lights are the best. They last forever too. Like I've had these lamps for years and years and years and years. Oh, look at that. You can see. Woohoo. All right. Right about that, yeah? Let's just make sure these aren't in my eyeballs so when I'm working, I'm not blinded. That's never fun. All right, I think I like that there. Oh yeah. All right. Let's see. Ugh, don't fall off the chair. Hey, look at that. I wonder if we could even zoom in a little bit closer. How would I do that? Ladder or chair. And let's come down a little. As long as I don't take too low. All right, let's try this one. We're good. Cool. So I got my little maintenance area, which you can't really see, huh? Cool. Whatever. I'm back to work anyhow. Now I can see what I'm doing. Love it. Red, where are you? There you are. Alright. Every now and then, get up close to your work and check it for neatness. It's very easy to go quickly and get sloppy. And if you go too fast and you get sloppy, what are some of the bad things that could happen? Your stitches could get too far apart, and then your work is going to fall apart over time. What else could happen? Head won't start moving there. If it doesn't fall apart, it could just look really wrinkly and bumpy on your client's head. And that would be a really easy way of telling that she's wearing a hairpiece, and I'm pretty sure nobody wants that to have happening on their head. That's my answering machine. Yes, I am. Hello. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep, I do it all. And there we go. It's usually a fake phone call. Fake, you know, like the ones that just call you endlessly and no one ever says anything. Or they're from like overseas. So a lot of that happening lately. Got about another inch here before I'm finished. I do need to overlap my binding slightly across the original binding edge because when I cut it, it left a diagonal free edge that needs to be secured so that the original binding doesn't create more unraveling and problems. Even though, the hair is ventilated over it and holding it down, you don't want it to fray at the edge that's open. That would look very ugly and tacky and messy. Probably also wouldn't feel really good on your client's scalp. Frayed edges. This is like a synthetic material, so it's not going to have that softness that something like cotton would have. It would feel scratchy over time on their heads. Almost there. Alright, so when you reach the end, be sure to back stitch several times the same stitch to ensure your thread will not come out or get loose. And then what you're going to do is leave the tail maybe like 1.5 inches long. And then you're going to tuck it inside the binding that you're going to whip stitch right back over onto itself. So again, it further protects it from unraveling. All right, so now that I've got my entire piece finished, I need to cut off a little excess here. Kind of a lot, actually. I don't need that anymore. I will save that for wrapping my other pieces. And what I'm going to do now is preview the work that is finished and take you a closer look. All right. So you can see the original bound edge. And then you can see how I have mine done here. Goes all the way around. So what I have to do next is turn it to the inside. Okay? See, we want it to look just like hair. So what I'm going to do is get my iron on low, and I am going to, do I want to press? Probably not. I'm not even going to press it. Sorry, I'm in seamstress mode. I would press fabric. But for this, I probably would just pin it in place with my straight pins to hold it down. I don't want to have a bumpy edge, so I need to hold it nice and tight and flat down, but not too tight where it's like rolling. You don't want it to roll into her head. All right. So we start again by pinning it to the form. You don't want to have to do this like holding it by hand the entire time. And I highly suggest getting a better, you know what, I have a better one. Why am I doing this to myself? I gotta stand. Let me get it. I thought for the purposes of the video, it would be better on like the table there. But that stand that I got is so cheap. And this one is gonna hopefully be a lot better. I mean, it is better. I don't have to say hopefully, it is better. I use it all the time when I go teach classes. I like it because it can actually expand this little doohickey here and lock my head on. There we go. See, it opens up inside so that it can't come off. This thing, this is like trash. It's just like a pre-molded thing. Alright, we'll talk about coffee. Let's lower this down a bit, tabletop height. it back on. Oh, see, my chair is already scratching my floor. Oh, it's worse. I feel kind of dramatic. Might be. Probably am. What else? Okay. Get over. I want like a tabletop version of this stand. There we go. Good? No? Not quite? Tilt it. Better. Now it's too high. See? Never get it right. For sure, this is a practice one, isn't it? Ah! Okay. Okay. So now, I don't even know if you could. You can sort of still see that, right? That's good. In the meantime, I bet you I could, now that I'm totally off track, I bet you I could totally figure a way. I can. See, there's a screw here. I can take that screw off and figure out some way to bolt this thing onto a tabletop. All right, that's my next project. Because that would be a lot more convenient than what I'm doing here. Anyhow, God, I get distracted fast, don't I? Okay. So we're back to pinning our base securely right in the middle, because you're going to need enough space that as you're working around the new bound edge that you don't want the pins right to the edge. You just want it like where it's not flopping all around. That would be like super annoying. Okay, the other thing is we're going to start at one end. I'm starting at the end that I already turned inward. And when we sew it down, you see how it's going to still leave this edge free? Well, you're going to need to turn it in. And as you turn it, it's going to create this thicker piece. And that's going to be stronger for your clips to sew it onto. Now, the issue we have here that you may or may not understand, and these are applique scissors, by the way. That's why they have that big shell on one side. I particularly like them for cutting the excess off of areas where I'm concerned about accidentally cutting something that I shouldn't. The big shell part of it acts as a protector, a shield, right? Okay, so anyways, the curve is going to cause a problem. So what we're going to do is first flatten down the non-curved areas. Once I do that, it will make it easier to fold and essentially pleat the curved areas. And make sure again that as you fold and press this down, that you do not allow the underside bias strip to show from the top side. So make sure if you're going to have any rollover that you're almost like a 1/32 of an inch rolling the top under. Don't roll the under over the top. That's backwards. And I'll show you more up close later. So just gonna roll it, press it, get as much of the excess fabric from both sides to flatten out as you can. And the corner. We shall come to the corner, not fall off the chair. I shall reposition my hairpiece though. I shall. In there. Alright. Ideally, you want to have as few pleats as possible because every time you create a pleat, you create bulk, which may or may not be acceptable for whichever said client or hairpiece you are working on. Maybe the client cannot have any bulkiness in their hairpiece because they don't have enough hair of their own to hide that extra volume, right? The hairpiece, we're adding volume and length possibly, but you know, if they don't have enough hair to hide this, it's gonna look obvious and weird that they're wearing a weird thick hairpiece. So don't do that to them. Whatever you can do is necessary to ensure there is no bulkiness. All right, so at this point in time, I am just putting in 2 pleats and just forming and shaping and seeing how it behaves. I might have to do three pleats. Woo! Almost fell. 3 pleats possibly, because this corner, I don't know. Actually, you know what? That's not bad. That's not bad. It's coming. Let me change my pin direction. This is a little bit of experimentation when you're working with this step. You need to make sure that you don't move too quickly and sew something down in place that you're like, oh, that looks terrible. Because then you just have to take your stitches out, or worse, buy a whole new piece. On this stuff, it's pretty hard to take your stitches out. You're probably just gonna have to buy a whole new piece and start over. I don't think you want to do that. But, you know, it's not the end of the world if you have to. again, on this side, we're coming into curvature of the piece, and so we need to approach it slightly different than the flat spots that we were just coming around pretty easily. So I'm going to start by repositioning the piece to get this hair out of the way. So just drag it under the piece. And repin it. Any remaining hair I can just clip down out of the way and return to flattening my edge and preparing to come into this tight little corner where I'm going to have to put in 2 little pleats. So what I'm doing is I'm remembering to roll, kind of wiggle and roll back and forth the excess material away from the seam area so it will lay flat. And then I use my own body heat and pressure to crease the edge. It makes it easier during the sewing process if it has some memory and it's not so puffy and bubbly. And if you were to iron it, like, I mean, I really want to iron stuff, but like this stuff could melt. So best not be doing that. I mean, I guess you could on a super, super low temperature with like some parchment paper over it. Not parchment paper, like I'm cooking. That would be muslin fabric, actually. Some unbleached muslin would work really well to protect it from the metal plates of your iron. But even then, I still can't guarantee. The stuff's so thin it could melt. For the most part, I find that my body heat is working pretty good to hold it and press it down. Just do whatever you can to keep wrinkles away. No bulgy puckering. I don't like it. It's puffy. That's it. Nope, still puffy. a little OCD. I don't know if you can tell. If it's not just right, I can't let it go. Alrighty. I like these darts now. Alright, so I'm going to show you just real quick up close what I've got going on so far. Alright. So you can see a nice clean edge, still very light, and we're just gonna sew this down. Let's see how I want to sew it down. I feel like top stitching is going to be ideal to keep it flat. And so I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to have to determine what kind of method I want to use, because like it's already been ventilated with hair on the other side, so any top stitching I do has to be done really carefully so that I don't make it look like I'm sewing the hair down flat on the upper side. And this is like the hardest thread to see. It's essentially like real fine fishing line. There we go. If I can't get my double knots to be in the same area, then I guess I have to do it again, right? So that's why I did 3 times. Good. Nice and secure, we don't want it unraveling. And at this point, I'm going to go clockwise so I can stay out of my own way. Forgot to anchor my piece. Alright, so first I gotta hook this on and anchor it. And now I gotta anchor my piece to my form. So with this method of top stitching, probably I'm honestly gonna, I'm just gonna whip stitch it from the top side now. I feel that that's gonna give me the best option to reduce bulk and hold it flat and like not sew the hair down and make it look flat. I know I just said we want it to look flat, but we want the seam to look flat, but we don't want the So again, a real careful scant edge. Come back here. Magnets to the rescue. Alright, so I'm going to show you what it looks like right now. I have to put more thread on my needle. I advise you when you start sewing that your thread that you're working with be no longer than what you can work with from where you're holding here to the end of your elbow. Anything longer than that is going to be like just crazy amounts of thread. It's going to be hard to manage. Get tangled, and then you're going to have to cut it and start over. So, this is the edge that I have sewn. It's very nice, very flat, and that's going to blend in really well onto her scalp. Cool, cool, right? All right. So at this point, I have finished between my fingers this way around, and now I have to finish from here to here on the top stitching on that edge. Like, you could go without it, but it will look cheap. It will not look high-end. It will not last. Your client will be like, I don't want to pay for this. So do it right the first time. The thread I'm using is Sulky Invisible. I literally got it from my fabric store, and I like it a lot. It is durable, it is invisible, and it is not bulky. And because it's not bulky, that makes it easier to tie and hold without coming undone. But because it is invisible, great, it's crazy to work with. I just dropped it. All right, hang on. So I'm just winding up the excess, provided I don't knot it. All right, let's try that again. So about there. All right. All right. So after you pull your stitch through, you're gonna have a loop. You're gonna take your needle and thread it from the bottom of the loop toward you. And then give it a little tug. So again, you're going to come from the top side of the fabric first, exit the bottom side. Hold your loop that you've just created and bring your needle through it toward your body. Then go through the top side again, into the bottom side, hold that loop open and thread right through it. This will create essentially like a little bit tighter knot effect on every single stitch that you place, and thereby allowing you a little bit more freedom to move around as you're sewing and not have all your previous stitches like pucker up and like get slack and loose again. So again, I really like this finish because it creates a very durable, long-lasting, removable hair piece, and it's very, very high-end finish. It's very, very durable, and that's going to be important for someone who needs a hair piece, like maybe it's for a kid, maybe it's for a grown-up, but either way, they live an active life, and they need something that can keep up with them. Something that's easy to clean, something that they don't have to worry about the edges coming apart and unraveling. If you sew it right, then it will be more likely that the hair piece is going to lose hair and need to be replaced or have someone ventilate more hair on it rather than your piece coming apart from bad quality. The likelihood of that is not going to be probable unless your stitching was subpar. So then I suggest you learn some better stitching technique, and I can help you with that. Anywhere where you have a dart, make sure you spend a little extra attention there, ensuring that the seam area will lay flat. So you might have to do smaller stitches, a few extra stitches, but anywhere there's a dart where you had to like fold the binding over on itself, you just really need to pay extra attention. No bubbling, keep it nice and flat. Still there? All right. All right, so now what we've got, you can see the puckering, right? We have to make sure that lays flat. So, I'm going to take a look at my clips and determine how and where I want to sew them on, and then determine what I'm going to do with the excess that I need to trim off. case you were wondering what the size is of my bias strip that I'm sewing with, it's about 1.25 inches, not more than 1.5 inches. Now my phone is about to die, so I'm gonna cut out, and if you wanna see how this turns out, you better check back. Can't talk. You better check back with me and make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Find me on Instagram. I am Hair Color Fitness, The Paradox Parlor, Teresa Ornelas. See you next time.